So you can see in the last 10 to 12 years, the dynamics of our system have changed greatly. And I'd like to brag on the teachers in the room. They've done a lot of hard work because it was kind of a little bit easier to teach when we were at 29% free and reduced lunch. The diversity in our system has changed, and it has changed very quickly through some annexations and growth in our city. And so that meant that we had to teach a lot differently. We had to do a lot of differentiated instruction in our system because we had homeless students in our system. We had a group of district leaders that went to Atlanta and went to Learning Forward Conference, and we heard Doug Reeves speak. And then we went to a 2-day intensive workshop just on Common Core with him. And he talked about the topics of power standards, unwrapping the standards, and talked a lot about learning, differentiate our awareness training based on who we were talking to. We were talking to the social studies at the department at the high school. Then we focused on looking at and analyzing some of the learning progressions in social studies, just to give them an awareness, not to dig deep into it. And then we began that next summer in pulling together about 60 teachers and administrators, and the teachers will be talking more about that. Then the next fall, that group of 60 teachers did a teacher leadership training, or the teacher leaders did turnaround training for every teacher in the building, and tried to attempted to recreate some of those conversations that now think. That second summer is when a lot of light bulbs actually started coming on. The first summer, we were all just trying to figure it out and digest all that was coming, and it was just very, very overwhelming. But that second summer, it seemed to be a little bit better. In fall of 2012, again, this group of teachers, along with our instructional partners, I mean, they're equipped to be able to take this back to the school, and we feel like that even in the teacher plannings, sessions, in the implementation, they will be able to fully implement. And then,
as the students go from grade to grade, try to figure out what skills we need to make sure that these kids have mastered by the time I'm a middle school principal. So in other words, when we have students come to the middle school, what are the specific individual skills that these students need to have mastered before they get to the middle school? So we were able to sit down with the teachers of the elementary school students and talk to them and just say, for example, we really need our students to be able to do fractions by the time we get to middle school. So if you guys can get them to do fractions, then we can definitely take them from pre-algebra and algebra and then get them onto the high school. So that was just something that we were able to share, and we've never really ever been able to do that before. We always knew what we needed at the middle school, but we never actually voiced it to the elementary schools. So that was very nice to hear. And also the elementary schools, even amongst their own grade levels, the second grade teachers would tell the third grade teachers, we really need them to be able to do this before they get to third grade. So that really opened up our eyes. That was the first year. Then we determined all those power standards that were needed at each grade level. And then we also met back again this summer, and we even were able to categorize those power standards even further and to try to look at the certain things that they need, and also look at what carry the most weight on the assessments. So in other words, what would be our power standards? Why would they be our power standards? And what would be the important ones that we really, really need to focus on? And then we also would then team with a high school and say, what do you need from us when they leave middle school, when they go into algebra at the 9th grade? What do you want us to have these students ready to do? So now we have a plan in which we want to try to work with that. And then we're also, it opened up the line of communication. So now the person that I was sitting by that summer, I now have an open communication. I could email them and say, look, we're working on this. We're having trouble with this, but we're going to try to get them to this point before we send them to you. So that was really eye-opening. I've never been in a meeting like that as a principal before, so it was very, very helpful.
I would say the same thing about the vertical discussions. I've been teaching 17 years, and the summer of 2011 was the first time I've ever sat down in a room of kindergarten through 12th grade teachers where we were able to have that type of discussion. I've always worked with 7 through 12, but never with our elementary school. And so that was a real eye-opener. And when we first started this, we tried to start from the top down and work our way choosing the power standards. We started with the 12th grade teachers and asked them, what are our kids still lacking when they get to you? And that can open up a lot of discussion when you have teachers from all grade levels sitting in the room, and we had to be very careful not to play the blame game, because your first response is to say, well, I taught them that when I had them in the 8th grade. I don't know why they don't have it that was one of the biggest things. By the second summer, we were all very comfortable with that, and it was not a blame game, it was about what was important for our kids and what were they missing by the time they got to the 12th grade, why were they not ready to move on. And that's how we started choosing our power standards. And like I said, we can't have every teacher in on that type of discussion. So in our in-service trainings, we did go back to our schools, and we started by, I'm language arts, so I started by meeting with my language arts department and going through and showing them the power standards we have chosen, and seeing if they agreed with the power standards, if there were more changes that needed to be made. Then we began meeting, language arts met with social studies, and we went over the power standards we had chosen with them. We asked for their help with the informational text component. And in fact, we were able to have some cross-curricular planning time, our science and math teachers and our language arts teachers and our social studies teachers at the middle school. And one of the things we did is the language arts teachers provided the social studies teachers with bell ringers. It was historical documents, and it was pulling main idea from those historical documents. Our social studies teachers used those for their bell ringers the entire second semester. It took us that long to get it together. But they used them all second semester, and I was very pleased when we got our ARMT results back this year to know that for the first time ever, for the 8th grade for the ARMT, our strength was informational text. And I believe that's where that comes from, because the kids saw that it's not just in English, it was cross-curricular. So that was a very big plus for us.
So we had to provide some opportunities for professional development to make up some time for our teachers. One of the ways we did that was bringing all of our math teachers, asking them to look at our curriculum, look at the Common Core, look at the power standards, align our Go Math that we've adopted with that, what we need to teach when, look at our BMath program, look at the modules, make sure they were in line with what we're teaching and when we're teaching it. But also we brought in our science and social studies teachers. And we said, okay, how can science and social studies help us teach math? What are some things they can bring in? How can they include it? We had our math teachers plan on it. We also brought in our elective teachers, our music teacher, okay, our art teacher, our technology teacher. And we said, where can you support math? You know, how many band people we have in the room, but if you're talking about a time signature, 4-4 time.
Power standards, and we unwrapped or unpacked those standards. And the biggest thing for us both summers is, what is this going to look like in the classroom? You know, how are we going to, we're going to be trained in it, and then how are we going to turn around and train the other teachers, or, you know, tell them what to expect with these new Common Core standards that we have. And so after our vertical discussions, which I'm just going to echo, was a huge eye-opener for me. I've only been teaching 8 years, but I've also never had the chance to sit down with high school teachers and hear what those students needed me to be teaching at the elementary level so that they were going to be successful in reading when they got to the high school level. So after we had some of those discussions with our vertical teams, we broke back into our grade level teams and took the standards and decided what our power standards were going to be from there. What's the 1 or 2 things from each strand that we need to make sure is our biggest focus and going to have the biggest impact on our students in elementary school so that they can be successful when they get into middle school and high school. And I know you can't see that up there, but we talked, as a 4th grade teacher, I was able to talk to 3rd grade teachers and 5th grade teachers. Talk to 3rd grade teachers about what are you doing that I just need to elaborate on in 4th grade, and then talk to 5th grade teachers about what is the biggest need with language arts that I can help you with as a 4th grade teacher. What do my 4th grade students need to know? So as elementary teachers, we tried as best as we could to recreate those conversations that we were having vertically, and we did that by doing a gallery walk of all of the standards from K through 6, and really trying to explain to the other teachers, you know, what we had done that summer and what we had learned from the vertical discussions that we had. And then the second summer, we came back and we, you know, looked back at our power standards to see if they needed any kind of revision after we had, you know, taught them for a year and really focused on them for a year. We looked to see if we needed to revise any of them or change anything, or our focus needed to be somewhere different. And then we began discussing what were we going to use for common assessments for that accountability piece for the whole system. And that's what we did.
Well, I'm the high school representative, so we all know, being from the high school, that we talked about the blame game a while ago, it's never our fault at the high school. We talked about that on right up here, I'm the only one from the high school, and it's never our fault. So elementary and middle school, you know, once they get to us, they should know everything, and it should already be covered before, and we're just fine tuning them to get on, but, we know better than that. What I'm talking about here is the common assessment. What we did is with all these ladies throughout the 2 summers, we sit down, and I teach history, and we sit down with the math and the English and the science, and we talked about what we needed to do to get them to a point when they got to the high school level. And one of the things that we talked about they had trouble with is reading for history. When they get to us, reading the text, they struggle with. The text is usually above, I teach 9th grade, so it's usually the text is above grade level. And so when they get that text and you're asking them to do something out of the book or do something here and there, for the most part, they can't grasp it. And even my honors kids sometimes struggle with it. And my lower level kids, they really struggle. And so you have to point it out to them and work with them through it. So our common assessment was, after we sit down with all these ladies and talked about all this, we sat down as a history department and we said, okay, look, we're focused on our literacy standards here. How can we talk with the English department? What can we do what do they need to know by the time they get into the 9th grade? And the thing that we came up with is they need to, student main ideas and 5 details to support the main ideas from a primary source. And if they could do that and build on that, then they could start to be successful. So we came up as a history department, a common assessment that we're going to use throughout the year, that they're going to get a primary source document and they're going to be able to do, the first time we're going to do number 1. And after they do that, we're going to build on it to 2 and 3, and we're going to do this 4 times throughout the year. And so we might do it first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, third 9 weeks, fourth 9 weeks, or however you set it up in your classroom. But throughout the year, you need to cover this 4 times. That way you can see if they're progressing, and from the first time you did it to the last time. Now I know some of my classes that I have, we're going to have to practice this before we ever even do it. And that's going to take, it might take us 5 or 6 times, because the first 2 times we might actually be practicing it before we actually do it to assess them. And then hopefully by the end of the year that we've done it so many times, and each time it's a different document. You know, and give them something that they haven't read before, and if they can pick out the main ideas and supporting details. And then, of course, you'll go to the number 2, then they'll have to rewrite it. And then the third one was, you know, get them to the point where they could evaluate the relevance of it to then and to their life today.